Next principle in our media manifesto is this idea that I have that copycats usually fall on their faces. We all know and love what Oreos did at the Super Bowl, what Samsung did at the Oscars, what Arby's did after Pharrell wore his hat at the Grammys. Each one of those was brilliant. And I think there were a lot of things that followed each of those, which were brands scrambling to say, how do I do that? What's my Oreo moment? What's my Samsung moment? What's my Arby's moment? It's the right question, but the execution often falls on its face because it's not original to the brand. What those three brands did worked for them. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, what's right for each brand? It's the question we ask at GE. Our CMO, Beth Comstock, has a great simple thing she says all the time, which is know thyself. And at GE, we really try so hard to embrace who we are, our own interestingness, as we call it. We've sort of given up trying to make jet engines cool and sort of thrown up our hands and said, jet engines are really cool. And if we can show that, if we can reveal that to the right audience at the right time in the right context, that's the very best thing that we can do. That's our own uncharted territory. That's how we can do things that are memorable. I'll show you just a couple quick examples. Yo, the fairly new platform, we went to one of our biggest and most important customers, CSX, makes trains. And we said, okay, we're gonna test Yo. Why don't we work on this together? So we currently have trains out there that are sending texts. My tank carries 5,300 gallons. It's a really fun way to bring a big machine to life. And in our case, by the way, make a customer super happy and feel very contemporary. We spend a lot of time with creators. I know you're going to hear from some folks over the course of the next day. And the borrowed equity we get. The example from the Grammys was one. We worked with Matthew Deere, a DJ. We had him come up to our Global Research Center and create a bunch of soundtracks on the sounds of industry. The sounds of industry are really, really cool. You know, we did this. Nearly 2 million downloads on BitTorrent. One of actually our chief technologist at GE called us, and his ask was, how do I help people understand the cool technology that we work on? How do I bring it to life? How do I unpack it? So we hired Baratunde Thurston, who many of you may know, formerly of The Onion, super funny. And rather than us try to tell the story of how a jet engine works or a wind turbine or a certain type of oil and gas technology, we had Baratunde go up there and we released a series of episodes. I think, guys, one of the lessons here is we don't get too precious over where these things live, whether they live on our channel or whether they live on the creators' channel. It's where are they going to be seen? Where are users, where are viewers who share our love of science most likely to bump into this kind of content? The next one, so that I'm not a copycat, I want to give credit to Unilever, Rob Masters, who I stole this from. But I think this is really true. We never sweat our assets enough as brands. You know, we create something, sometimes in partnership with a Bloomberg or a Slate or an NBC, and we think, great, we've done that. It's over, and we move on to the next. And I think we fool ourselves when we think that a broad audience has seen these. We talk now all the time about how do we re-release assets? How do we put them out in a global marketplace? What are we doing that's visual and can be so-called post-literate that we can put out there? So we've got to, as a brand, maximize our assets to just drive more attention. And then the last one I would say in terms of our so-called media manifesto is this idea at GE that we shout louder than we spend. Now, I realize as a brand, we're fortunate to have a good budget, but it is infinitesimally smaller than anybody in this room can imagine. Peter Naylor is somewhere, he can attest to that, I'm sure. We, as a brand our size, as a brand that is worth $46 billion, sixth most valuable brand in the world, our media dollars are not that big. So we've got to shout louder. We've got to amplify. We had one of our agencies, OMD, do a calculation last year, and we found that for every dollar we spend, we're getting $1.25 of value when we layer on social, when we layer on earned media. And we're super proud of that. I think for us, our mantra is, even though we're GE, even though we're big, even though we're in 170 countries, we've got to be scrappy. We've got to think small as well as think big. We've got to behave the way a nimble, agile startup would. And we've got to find ways that put us forward as a marketer. And I think hopefully from all of this, you get a sense as to how we're doing that. I'm going to end with a piece of content. And I want to sort of end by reminding everybody here that despite everything I said and how much I believe wholeheartedly in all of these principles, there is no substitute for fantastic content. We can do all the right things. We can follow all the tenets that the IAB laid out, and they're all fabulous. If we don't create interesting, great content, there is no such thing as great advertising, native advertising, the right kinds of impressions. It all starts with telling a great story in a great way.